Today, we're going to be comparing the new Powerbeats to the Powerbeats Pro. In general, both of these are great workout earbuds and they both have the same feature set, except for one is completely wireless while the other ones aren't, and there's also a $100 price difference between these two. So, let's see if it's worth upgrading to the Powerbeats Pro, or if you'll just be perfectly fine with the wired Powerbeats. So, like I just mentioned, there's a $100 price difference between these two earbuds. The wired Powerbeats retail for $150, which is reasonable in my opinion, whereas the Powerbeats Pro retail for $250. And like I said in the past, I think that paying upwards of $200 for any pair of truly wireless earbuds is a lot, and that's definitely the case with the Powerbeats Pro. But nonetheless, if you want to pick either of these earbuds up, they'll be linked down below. Now, first, let's adjust the carrying cases here, because I think this is the thing that I dislike most about the new Powerbeats. The wired Powerbeats come included with this cheap carrying pouch, which is going to do absolutely nothing to protect your earbuds whenever you've got them in your gym bag. Whereas the Powerbeats Pro come included with this fairly durable charging case. I've been using the Powerbeats Pro as my main workout earbuds for the last year, and this carrying case has been able to stand up to constant wear and tear without any problems. My only critique is that this carrying case is very slippery. I wish this carrying case either had some knurling on it, or if it had a softer feel to it so that it would be easier to handle this fairly large case. But obviously, the Powerbeats Pro's case charges the earbuds themselves, so this now leads us to battery life. The Powerbeats Pro have a combined battery life of 24 hours, just like the AirPods 2 and the AirPods Pro. Whereas the wired Powerbeats have an advertised battery life of 15 hours, and I found that I can usually go about 5 to 6 workouts in between charges with these earbuds. Whereas with the Powerbeats Pro, I can usually go about 2 weeks in between charges with these earbuds, which equates to about 10 workouts for me. Now, thankfully, both of these earbuds charge via a lightning port, which means you can charge your earbuds and iPhone with the same cable. And they both even have these fast charging numbers. If you plug the wired Powerbeats in for 5 minutes from a dead battery, they're going to get you an hour of playback time. But with the Powerbeats Pro, they'll get you an hour and a half of playback time from that same 5-minute charge. But one major pet peeve of mine about the Powerbeats Pro, and this also applies to the AirPods 2 and AirPods Pro, is that iOS doesn't explicitly remind you when you need to charge your charging case. Now, yeah, these charging cases have these built-in indicator lights, but I rarely pay it any attention because it's so easy and natural for me to remove my earbuds and put them back in without having to actually look at the case. And this is indicative of good design. But this has led me to, on multiple occasions, realize that my earbuds are dead at the gym. So what iOS should do is that it should give you a notification or pop-up to remind you to charge your case whenever your case is on low battery. Or maybe when you plug your iPhone into charge, it should also serve you a second notification and say, hey, you should probably charge your charging case because last time we checked, it was low on battery too. So yeah, even though on paper the Powerbeats Pro have way more battery life than the wired Powerbeats, I'm telling you from my experience, it's very easy to forget to charge your Powerbeats Pro and end up with dead earbuds at the gym. And nobody wants that. Whereas with the wired Powerbeats, or even with the Powerbeats 3, whenever you hear that notification that your battery is low, you're more likely to charge your Powerbeats right after you're done with your workout. Now, when it comes to the earbuds themselves, obviously the biggest difference between them is that the Pros are completely wireless while the other ones aren't. And yeah, overall, the Powerbeats Pro are more comfortable than the wired ones because you don't have this wire snagging or resting on the back of your neck. But the Powerbeats Pro aren't just more comfortable than these other earbuds because they're completely wireless. They're also a little more comfortable because the ear hooks on the Pros are a little more malleable. I found that it's a lot easier to get a better fit with the Pros than with the wired version. The ear hooks on the wired Powerbeats just aren't as bendable, so I've noticed that the ear hooks might rest a little awkwardly compared to the Pros. But also, the Powerbeats Pro are a little lighter, so overall it's a lot easier to forget that the Powerbeats Pro are even there. But nonetheless, you do get used to the wired Powerbeats, and both of these Powerbeats are going to stay in place no matter how hard you're working out.
Both of these earbuds fit fine, but the Powerbeats Pro are a little more comfortable.
Regarding Bluetooth connectivity, both of these earbuds are using Apple's H1 chip, which means a few things. First off, both of these earbuds can easily hot swap between any of your Apple devices associated with your iCloud account, which is always great for any power user that's heavily invested into Apple's ecosystem. But don't worry, both of these earbuds can also just as easily pair with any Android device you might have. Both of these earbuds are also using AAC, and they both have zero latency across the board whenever watching movies or videos on your phone, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. But when it comes to reliability, I do have a bone to pick with Apple. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been using the Powerbeats Pro as my main workout earbuds. But ever since December, I started suffering from connectivity issues where whenever I took out my Powerbeats out of their case, only one of them would actually pair with my phone. So what I would actually have to do is that I would have to put them back into their case and take them out a few times until they both finally paired with my phone. Now, I started to have these issues when I updated my iPhone to iOS 13. But ever since I updated to iOS 13.4, that issue has gone away for the most part. So what I'm getting at here is that even though Apple is great and all, depending on who you ask, having connectivity issues with your $250 Powerbeats Pro isn't entirely out of the question from my experience. If you just want something that's just going to work, then you're probably better off with the wired Powerbeats. Because it is damn near impossible to get Apple to admit that there's something wrong with their products. I spent multiple hours on the phone with tech support at the Genius Bar, and I even sent these Powerbeats out to Apple's service center, and they just sent them back and they went, "Oh, we didn't find anything wrong with them. It's your problem now." Even though these earbuds are still under warranty, and I even got the Apple Care Plus for them.
But now let's talk about listening to music with these earbuds. For the most part, both of these earbuds perform relatively the same. They both have the same amount of hard-hitting bass, they both get just as loud, and they both have the same soundstage and instrument separation. Please don't fall into the placebo effect where just because the Powerbeats Pro costs more than the wired Powerbeats, they're going to automatically sound better. But the thing about the wired Powerbeats is that I feel the treble is just a little too high, making them ear-piercing at times. Whereas the treble on the Powerbeats Pro is where it's supposed to be. So I expect Apple will reduce the treble on the wired Powerbeats in a future software update and ultimately make them sound identical to the Powerbeats Pro. Because that's really the only difference between these two earbuds, is just the higher treble on the wired Powerbeats. But in the meantime, what you can do with the wired Powerbeats is that you can go into your EQ settings and select the bass boosted EQ or the treble reduced EQ. I found that both help make the wired Powerbeats sound a little better. But overall, both of these earbuds have a bass heavy sound signature. The bass on these earbuds isn't overpowering the mids, so these earbuds do sound decent, but when the bass comes in, it hits hard. Now, when it comes to actually controlling your music playback, both of these earbuds have their media control buttons built right into their earbud. You've got a volume rocker, and the Beats logo serves as a multi-purpose button. And overall, these controls are very easy to use, and they just work when you need them to. But just keep in mind, only the right earbud on the wired Powerbeats have these control buttons, whereas both of the earbuds on the Powerbeats Pro have these control buttons. So you can use either hand to control your music, or if you just want to use one earbud at a time, you still have full control over your music, which I think is an underrated feature of the Powerbeats Pro, because not a lot of other earbuds can do this.
But also, keep in mind, thanks to the H1 chip in both of these earbuds have always listening Siri support. So if you got your hands full, or if you're in the middle of a set, you could just be like, "Hey Siri, skip a track or raise the volume," and then Siri will just do it. And you know, having always listening Siri definitely does come in handy when she works the first time. But another thing to keep in mind is that only the Powerbeats Pro have proximity sensors. So whenever you take one of your earbuds out, these earbuds will automatically pause your music. Now, this is great and all, but proximity sensors definitely shouldn't be a deciding factor whenever you're trying to choose between the Powerbeats Pro and the wired Powerbeats. But it would have definitely been cool if the wired Powerbeats had proximity sensors, because it would have been a cool upgrade from the Powerbeats 3. But one upgrade the new Powerbeats do have over the Powerbeats 3 is that their microphone does sound a little better. And I think the microphone on the wired Powerbeats sounds the same as the microphone on the Powerbeats Pro. And I think the microphone on both of these earbuds are both perfectly fine for phone calls. But for comparison's sake, the microphone on the AirPods and AirPods Pro do sound better than the microphones found on Powerbeats.
But ultimately, both the Powerbeats and Powerbeats Pro are great pairs of workout earbuds. But when it comes to choosing between these two, I think it all comes down to comfort and convenience. The Powerbeats Pro are more comfortable than their wired counterparts because their ear hooks are more malleable, so it's easier to get a better fit. They're lighter, and they also don't have a wire connecting the two, so overall it just makes it easier to forget you're even wearing the Powerbeats Pro. But like I mentioned earlier, not having connection issues with your Powerbeats Pro isn't entirely out of the question. And even though these earbuds do have a combined battery life of 24 hours, it can be easy to forget to charge your case and end up with their earbuds at the gym. But in theory, the Powerbeats Pro are overall better than the wired ones on paper. But personally, I think most people will be better off with the wired Powerbeats. I just think the Powerbeats Pro are hard to justify at $250. I use them because I have them, but I recommend you save yourself some money and just go with the wired Powerbeats. You're still getting a great battery life, you have always listening Siri, and these earbuds sound the same. But for me to justify the Powerbeats Pro, I think that they would need to have active noise cancellation to help block out people at the gym, and they also need to have transparency mode for people who like to run or bike outdoors. But if you can find the Powerbeats Pro on sale for like $200, and they've actually gone to that price in the past, then yeah, by all means, pick up the Powerbeats Pro. But for now, all I want for iOS 13 or iOS 14 is just to give you a notification on your phone to remind you to charge your case. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick any of the products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.